I created the Omega car because it was all about intelligent and efficient manufacturing. I think the way we're manufacturing even normal cars is stupid, let alone electric cars, which is orders of magnitude more stupid. Why did I build this car originally? It was the hollow rhetoric of Barack Obama.
I'll help our auto companies retool so that the fuel-efficient cars of the future are built right here in America.
But between 100 and 130,000, if you're having to replace your battery, not only is that a major cost for your car, but you then have the greenhouse gas emissions and the ecological impact associated with creating the battery again, which makes it worse. We can do it better for people, for the environment, for everything. And not waste money and make automakers basically go bankrupt over EV mandates of stuff that nobody wants. Let the free market decide. I can make something that's better for the environment that people actually want. Don't let idiot politicians take power. But that's what it is. EV mandates kill innovation because they're making a mess of it for everybody and the environment. They're hypocrites, not because they're evil, they're hypocrites because they're incompetent and they want money and power. We need to get rid of them. You damn right I'm voting for Trump in 2024. Well, I am back at my home garage and have done some more math and due diligence relating to my Omega car recyclable car concept that this year got 104.72 miles per gallon on diesel alone and did 0 to 60 in 4.61 seconds, beating my Dodge Viper, equaling that of a 2019 Corvette Grand Sport, and coming identical to a Tesla Model 3. Well, 2 weeks ago I did some math on it because I wanted to see what the cost to drive that car per 100 miles compared to a Tesla Model 3 would be. And it turns out even with an at-home charge where it will be cheaper with the natural average of electricity per kilowatt hour and diesel, my car driving at 100 miles would be $3.45, whereas the Tesla Model 3 at an at-home charge would be $4.65 and up to $6.85 at a supercharger station. But when you consider the greenhouse gas emissions for CO2 emitted for both of those cars per 100 miles, my Omega car concept came in at 21.2 pounds of CO2 greenhouse gas emissions, where the Tesla per 100 miles would be 23.5. So obviously a greater CO2 greenhouse gas emission to generate that electricity on the national average when considering all of the ways to generate electricity. So a very fair comparison. But the whole reason I created that car concept was because I felt the way we were manufacturing cars was wrong. Had too much of an environmental impact, of course, took too much energy to produce, and mostly because it's too damn expensive to make cars. And I was just considering normal internal combustion cars, not electric, which have a much higher environmental impact, require more energy to create, and frankly are more expensive. So today I did the due diligence, just the basics on that to give you guys some numbers and think about it. But the reason I created that Omega car goes way back to the Democratic National Convention in 2008. And the line that stuck with me, that pissed me off, was Obama and his rhetoric, which I knew was just hollow BS, going, "I'll help Detroit retool so the energy efficient cars of tomorrow built here for the sake of the world, blah, blah." And I'm thinking, that's BS. And then after watching him for a while, I go, this is all BS. But there was something else done by that administration that we're going to talk about at the end of this video and bring it all full circle, which is going to be important because I think in the next video, we need to start looking at the current presidential administration and what they say. So let's go on to the math and some articles here. So manufacturing impact of the CO2 basis. All right, so first thing I did was literally just type into the search engine, let's find this, CO2 impact of manufacturing EV versus ICE car. And that's into Google, which, let's be honest, is quite leftist, which means they're going to support electric vehicles and electric vehicle mandates. All right, so I did that. Now, the first thing that pops up after AI is trying to help me is something called COATS, the right way to dry. And this article is the life cycle emissions of an EV compared to an ICE car, and how it's greener, etc. But let me go down here. Production of EVs and batteries generate more CO2 before the first wheel turns. However, the total carbon footprint of ICE vehicles quickly overtake that of EVs after 15,000 miles of driving. Okay, but with no information. So this is well known, but I'm going to keep going, and there's a lot of graphs and a lot of details. And the beauty of all those things in studies are studies usually reflect that of the opinion of the people paying for them. And when you put a lot of information together, you can do it in a way to reflect the opinion, belief, or direction the person that put them together wants to. Well, I'm not going to do that, so we're going to keep it really simple. Let's just move on. Let's see what somebody says on Reddit here. Reddit's ridiculous. But in this circumstance, it was kind of interesting in reading the top conversation that came up. And there's something I pulled out of here, which you guys can do some numbers on. But it says here, an average fossil car emits 8.5 tons of CO2 through its production, while an EV with a 64 kilowatt battery emits 14.3 tons. So just for the sake of comparison, let's take those numbers. So 8.5 tons versus 14.3 tons. Okay. Well, I'm going to do a little math, and then we're going to keep reading some things. So my Omega car, over 100 miles of driving, creates 21.201 pounds of CO2 greenhouse gas, as per my last video we spoke about. So times that by 1,000, that'd be 100,000 miles. So that would be 21,201 pounds of CO2 divided by 2,000, which is a ton. And my Omega car, over 100,000 miles of driving, gets or creates 10.6005 tons of CO2 greenhouse gas emissions. So a little over 10 tons. The Tesla Model 3, I'm just going to cut to the answer so I don't bore you guys, is 11.765 tons of CO2 gas emitted. So close to what my Omega car does, a little bit more. But a Tesla, on average, an electric car is something like more than 50% more polluting to create the car and battery the first time than the internal combustion engine car. So my car is crushing it. But here's the thing about my car when I originally created it. I created the Omega car because it was all about intelligent and efficient manufacturing. I think the way we're manufacturing even normal cars is stupid, let alone electric cars, which is orders of magnitude more stupid. They're inefficient, they're toxic, they're too complex, they require too much energy to produce. So if a normal ICE car is 8.5 tons of greenhouse gas emissions to produce, and the normal electric car is 14.3 tons, which we're looking at, God, that's like, what is that? Let's say 80% more CO2 gas emitted creating an electric car. Well, let's be reasonable. Let's say my car producing it would be 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions of a normal ICE car to produce. Then that would only be 4.25 tons instead of 8.5 tons of the ICE car. So let's add 4.23 to what mine would create over 100,000 miles. That would be in total 14.85 tons over 100,000 miles and producing the car. When the gosh darn Tesla ends up being 11.7 tons plus the 14.3 tons. What's that? I should have done some math. It's, it's 26 tons, a little over 26 tons. Mine is a crap load less than that. So let's keep moving on. That was the whole point of my car. A better manufacturing for a low environmental impact and make it affordable. An affordable car for people the world over. You want to make a fancy car? Okay, it takes more to do. You want more power? Great, it takes more to do, but it's still more efficient. If you need to make little commuter cars that are effective that people can afford, you can do that. It's a total different direction that is so relevant right now. But let's read some more things. So the EPA is an interesting one. Now, the EPA has electric vehicle myths, which they address in here, which is really fascinating to me. So, myth number 1. Electric vehicles are worse for the climate than gasoline cars because of power plant emissions. So I'm going to click on that. Because they go into it. Electric vehicles typically have a smaller carbon footprint than gasoline cars, even when accounting for the electricity used for charging. Plus, they are far more efficient when it comes to energy use. Ooh, that's where they get you. Electric cars are far more efficient when it comes to energy use. What does that mean? Because I heard recently our current Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, or Booty Juice, it's pronounced something like that, Mayor Pete, smiling cockily by saying that exact line when someone in Congress was questioning him about all of the production and CO2 emissions based upon that. But he's focusing on this energy use. I think what they're saying is they're trying to make you focus on the fact that going from an electric battery to the electric motor and creating torque to drive it, there's less of a loss of energy in that system than a loss of hypothetical energy of burning fuel in an internal combustion engine car to make torque. But the reason that is a myth, and frankly a lie by now on the EPA's website, a lie by the Secretary of Transportation, in exactly the same way the Democrats are arguing about inflation, which I'm going to tell you, is because that's not accounting for what it takes to generate the electricity that you charge it with, which that there's then losses in the entirety of the system and grid before it can get there, and losses to charge the car, and then losses in the car. Plus, you have to burn fuel, whether it's coal or petroleum, there's stuff even from nuclear, there's stuff even from wind. All of that creates greenhouse gas emissions. All of that getting there. So the fact that people and the EPA here are saying, and they're far more efficient when it comes to energy use, it's a dodge. It's like this. The left likes to say, inflation is down. It's not effing down. It's still growing. It's massive. Inflation is up like 25, 40, 50%, depending on what it is now, from 4 years ago or more. But they're making idiots think it's down because guess what? This month, inflation grew by slightly less percent than it did last month. It's an argumentative point made with like 1/5 of the truth in a way to purposefully mislead the public, and I hate that. But let's move on. The EPA has numerous other myths here. Electric vehicles are worse for the climate than gasoline cars because of battery manufacturing. That is a thing to take into consideration, which I brought into with the basic greenhouse gas emission. But there are a lot of other things to take into consideration, which even come down to human rights in mines and funny places of the world, owned by countries that may not like us, like communist China. But people typically eating their avocado on the Malibu pier, not really worried about what's not in their backyard if they get to feel good about what they're driving. Myth 3, electric vehicle batteries are unreliable and need to be replaced every few years. They're not really that unreliable nowadays, but they do need to be replaced. And from what I'm seeing is, it also, cold weather dramatically influences these batteries. So it's real nice if you're in Southern California, the weather's the same all the time. But if you're in Ohio or anywhere with a winter, that demolishes it. And from me reading between the lines and seeing what's going on, these batteries are basically going to last about 100,000 miles, give or take, maybe a little bit more, before they're trash and you're going to want to replace them. So truthfully, I did that whole CO2 greenhouse gas emission thing at 100,000 miles. But between 100 and 130,000, if you're having to replace your battery, not only is that a major cost for your car, but you then have the greenhouse gas emissions and the ecological impact associated with creating the battery again, which makes it worse. Which arguably, if you just keep up your internal combustion engine car and keep it highly efficient over a period of time, that's not bad. I'll put it that way. So I also found an article from Car and Driver here. Now, Car and Driver, I haven't looked in a bit, but it seems that most of these automotive publications are starting to skew left, like Jalopnik, which is basically just a rag to do leftist stuff and rag on Elon Musk all day long and not be a car channel anymore. But Car and Driver writes, electric car battery life, everything you need to know, including how long they last. So this is I think, seemingly a fairly reasonable, realistic article. I didn't feel like they were totally trying to mislead you. But it does say all automakers currently offer at least an 8-year, 100,000-mile warranty on EV battery packs. Gee, I wonder why they pick 8 years and 100,000 miles. Probably because they're not going to last much longer than that. And depending on the range and type of vehicle, it's talking about how Tesla offers coverage for 100, 150,000 miles. So use that as an information that automakers are offering that for a reason. Once they get past that point, you know, they're kind of on borrowed time, shall we say. But I want to go on because I'm sounding a little ranty, and I don't really want to sound ranty right here. I did some more math, right? So, I did do the math here, which would have been much helpful a minute ago for me not to sound silly. So, an ICE car, a normal one, manufacturing is creating 8.5 tons of CO2 emissions to create that car. And then over 100,000 miles, they're saying the normal ICE car, in this circumstance, something that gets 32 miles per gallon, which I was kind of rating my 1994 Corvette back when, assuming they're doing it on gasoline, was like something like 27.9 tons of greenhouse gas CO2, which ends up being a total of 36.43 tons of CO2 emissions. Quite a lot. Long story short, the Tesla Model 3, the EV, you got 14.3 tons to manufacture it, 11.76 to drive it 100,000 miles, so it's 26 tons. My Omega car, if I considered having that, the 50% of the manufacturing, which is what that whole concept was, is to be less impact from an ICE car, 4.25 tons of greenhouse gas to manufacture it, plus 10.6 tons to drive it 100,000 miles. On diesel alone, you get 14.85. That's 12 less tons than the EV to manufacture and drive it 100,000 miles. But then you're going to have to replace the battery on the stupid EV, but my diesel motor is going to still keep going for hundreds of thousands of miles because that's what they do. Of course, you're going to have to change oil, but you keep it in fine fettle, and I just demolish the EV. And which is really fascinating. So I do want to bring up that something else. So the ICE car, the normal one, takes 8.5 tons to manufacture a new car. Whereas my Omega car, over 100,000 miles, creates 10.6 tons. To manufacture the car is what you burn over 100,000 miles. And just to produce one EV is 4 tons more of greenhouse gas than what mine was to drive 100,000 miles. We need to make cars last longer. We need to make them smarter and not just a consumer good to be thrown away every few years. That's killing us. That's not helpful for people's money and pocketbook. That's not helpful for the environment. That's not helpful for anything. But we have built an industry and a manufacturing machine that's built on consumerism. And that's why cars are getting complex and expensive and stupid. Because automotive manufacturers need to find a new way to get money out of people and keep being profitable and feeding the machine. It's stupid. And the thing about EV mandates are, what are they? Are they about saving the environment? No, they're not. Because I can save the environment better with something that's internal combustion. And I'm just one guy that built a car like that. Do you know what I can do with any resources at my fingertips? A hell of a lot better than that. And that's already a hell of a lot better than anything else that's going on. So what are these EV mandates about? Well, if you can no longer make money with where it's going there, it's an argumentative point made with like 1/5 of the truth in a way to purposefully mislead the public, and I hate that. But let's move on. You need to transfer the money from one pocket to another, big pockets. You need power, you need control. And that's what politicians need. They need something to make a fuss over, implement something, to change the tide, to take credit for, to stir the pot. But the thing about the left is their whole argument is saving the environment. They're not saving the environment. They're hurting it because we can do better with where I was going already, with already where all the development, where all the money is over the last century developing this stuff. we can do it better for people, for the environment, for everything. And not waste money and make automakers basically go bankrupt over EV mandates of stuff that nobody wants. Let the free market decide. I can make something that's better for the environment that people actually want. Don't let idiot politicians take power. But that's what it is. EV mandates kill innovation because you're stuck doing this. But what's interesting, why did I build this car originally? It was the hollow rhetoric of Barack Obama, who came in 2008. And then we had the financial crisis because out of control lending here, there, everything else, you know, the crap the Democrats love to do. And then we bailed out the automobile makers and we pumped out big muscle cars and trucks. Now, I like big muscle cars and trucks and things that go fast. And if you can afford the energy, great, free country. But old Obama, that's not what you said you were gonna do if you're spending all that money. But something else that's a big lie that I remember from back then, I kind of forgot about. MPGE. What's that? Well, what mile per gallon does an electric car? Well, an electric car doesn't get mile per gallon. It's electric. There ain't no gallons in it. It's an equivalent made by the Environmental Protection Administration. So you can better understand your electric car. It's interesting. I looked it up. It gives you some equivalent. It's got a calculation. The EPA uses a formula where 33.7 kilowatt hours of electricity is considered equivalent to 1 gallon of gasoline. But this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't really add up. It says a lot of stuff, but it's kind of junk. Miles per gallon equivalent. Unit of measure used to compare the energy efficiency of electric vehicles to gas-powered cars. The Environmental Protection Agency introduced MPGE in 2010. But who is behind making the EPA do it? It says, here are some examples of MPGE ratings for popular electric cars. Tesla Model S, 120 miles per gallon E. Tesla Model X, 102 miles per gallon E. I guess maybe. But you know, it's interesting because I looked up and see when did that come out? What administration? And this is interesting. This is from Forbes. The EPA's methodology is flawed because it assumes perfect conversion of the potential energy in fossil fuels to electricity, an assumption that violates the second law of thermodynamics. Yeah, okay, great. The DOE, Department of Energy, has a better methodology that computes electric vehicle equivalent miles in real world. But what I want to get down to was the Clinton administration back when came up with a crazy factor for telling the general public how great electric cars are. But it was so unrealistic. Here we go. Incredibly, the DOE actually established and published such a standard and rules-making process way back in the Clinton administration. The standard, called well-to-wheels, adds a couple new factors to the MPGE calculation we discussed above. I could go into this more, and I will. But for right now in this video, I just wanted to bring up for you guys to think about the environmental impact, the energy, the carbon emissions. All this comes into play to manufacture an electric car, to manufacture an ICE car. Because I didn't build my car to compete with electric cars back then. Back then, it wasn't remotely a big deal. I built my car over 10 years ago because I thought Obama was full of crap and the government doesn't know what they're doing. And the way we just manufacture normal cars is stupid, toxic, expensive, useless, and people need cars that they can afford that are efficient. And by the way, if you have a brain, you can actually make them handle and be safe and develop them. So they do a lot of great things too. Like, I just looked around and go, we're actually a lot smarter than what we're doing as a nation. And now we're on this absurd track with electric vehicle mandates from the left, which I just say is an idiotic left out to seize power, which is true. They're demolishing any of innovation, and they're forcing us to go down a track to make companies broke, people broke, everybody broke, just in the name of trying to force a future upon us that we're not ready. And these damned politicians, hell, they can't change their own damn oil. You think they know crap about engineering anything? They can't look at a small picture. They can't be micro-focused. They can't be macro-focused. They sure as shit don't know what's in the best interest of people or the world because they're making a mess of it for everybody and the environment. They're hypocrites Not because they're evil. They're hypocrites because they're incompetent and they want money and power. We need to get rid of them. You damn right I'm voting for Trump in 2024. And you're damn right these electric vehicle mandates need to get pushed back. I don't think electric vehicles are evil. I think there is a place for them. But they're not a solution for everything anywhere. But what is a solution for everyone everywhere is good manufacturing concepts and techniques and direction and good presidential and national policy that actually allows for innovation to happen and for a free market to dictate better vehicles for the future, where we don't just let creeps in Washington mandate all kinds of idiot regulations, from safety stuff that maybe doesn't matter to emissions to electric vehicle mandates, and giving opportunities for alphabet agencies to weaponize things against people and stuff to make money for big corporations. It's all shit. And that's what my Omega car was all about proving. 10 years ago, one guy in a barn, they got tired of politicians that knew how to do it better. And I did. And now I'm talking about it some more. So, I guess maybe I'm just going to have to start talking about some politicians and what they say as an example. And I really want to talk about, I think he was a mayor, old Mayor Pete, the current Secretary of Transportation, because it's really easy to beat up on a president, but let's be honest, it takes more than one guy to run a country and look after it. And I think the Secretary of Transportation is kind of involved with a lot. I've heard him talking about it. It all sounds like crap, even worse crap than Obama. So I'm going to analyze that at some point, and I'm just going to keep going talking about it. So I'll see you guys next time. Share it. Tell me what you think. And that's all I got. I could have ended this better, but hey, I'm a guy in my garage in the evening, and I used up all my brain power building that car. But I think I can scratch some more up if anybody wants to do anything awesome and big together. See you guys next time. Vote for Trump. We really need this country to go somewhere better.